The courtroom smelled of blood, ozone, and smug superiority. Shackled, hunched, and half-starved, the old human didn't speak as the Supreme High Marshal mocked his species before 1,000 alien delegates. "You are a relic," Velm sneered. "An expired myth in cracked flesh." The human blinked once, then leaned forward. "You want war?" he rasped, voice like gravel over a dying flame. The room hushed. "We will give you war." And then, in the farthest sectors of the galaxy, the Terran beacons began to sing. The chamber was carved from obsidian black alloy, polished until the ceiling caught firelight like a blade. Over 1,000 alien eyes watched, unblinking, from seats carved into the great walls of Zargath Prime's tribunal hall. All species were represented, some in robes, some in exosuits, some without form altogether. Above them, banners of the Galactic Empire hung like execution hoods. The old human shuffled in, shackled, barefoot. His gait betrayed age but not weakness, more calculation than fragility. The collar around his neck pulsed with neural suppression, each beat a reminder that his brain was monitored and restrained. His name was Commander Elias Roke, but they announced him as the Last Ape. The Supreme High Marshal stepped forward with theatrical elegance. Xarth Velm, towering, plated in gold-veined carapace, raised one claw and silenced the murmurs. "Behold the ruin of Earth," he declared. "A fossil dragged from dust. A living testament to extinction denied only by incompetence." Laughter rippled through the delegates. Roke raised his head, eyes scanning the room with the slow burn of someone not impressed, but amused. Velm leaned closer, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Say something, relic. Speak for your species." Roke's mouth twitched. Not a smile, more a memory of one. "You've gone quiet since your capture," Velm continued. "Where's the infamous Terran defiance? No poetic last words? No desperate plea?" He turned to the crowd, arms wide. "Perhaps the humans have finally accepted their place, beneath our boots." The audience roared. Roke blinked once. "You want war?" he said, voice low, dry, too calm. Velm paused. "What?" Roke leaned forward. "We will give you war." The silence dropped like a weapon. Velm blinked his secondary eyelids. "You'll give us war?" he repeated, voice uncertain for the first time. "You alone in chains?" Roke's collar pulsed red, registering elevated neural activity. He ignored it. "I'm not here alone," he said. Velm laughed. "Your rebellion was crushed. Your fleet never existed. Your people are ash." Roke stared at him, unfazed. "You assume too much for a species that's never fought a real war." The lights flickered. A low hum rose beneath the tribunal floor, barely perceptible, like the purr of something waking up after centuries. Velm snapped toward his guards. They checked their instruments, shook their heads. No anomaly. The marshal sneered. "You tried to intimidate us with riddles and old soldiers' bluster. No matter. You'll die the same way your world did, screaming and irrelevant." Roke gave him nothing but silence. Velm turned to the crowd. "Let it be known across the galaxy that the last of Earth's filth meets his end at the hands of order." He raised a gleaming ceremonial blade, handed to him by a scribe slave. "This act shall cleanse a wound long rotting." Roke tilted his head. "Your blade's ceremonial. The real edge is already at your throat." The floor beneath the tribunal platform vibrated, just once, just enough. Several delegates looked down. Velm snapped. "Guards, confirm environmental stability." No response. He turned. One of his guards was gone. Not collapsed, not attacked. Gone, as if never there. The others stood motionless, eyes wide, weapons untouched. Their internal systems were dark. Disabled. The floor lit with a slow red spiral, tracing a pattern none had seen in over 600 years. A Terran glyph. "Shut it down," Velm growled. "No," Roke said, voice steady. "Let it finish." The light spiraled faster. The hum deepened. Velm lunged forward, blade raised. "You are nothing! I am memory." Roke said. Velm swung. The blade met nothing. A ripple passed through the air as if reality skipped. His hand locked mid-strike, twitching. A feedback surge raced through his carapace. The collar around Roke's neck deactivated with a crisp click. It slid from his neck and hit the floor with a sound that didn't echo. It stuck to the metal, magnetized. The Empire's delegates panicked. Some stood, others vanished into personal phase gates. Alarms blared, softly at first, then violently. Roke stepped forward, free. Velm staggered back. What have you done? Roke looked up at the ceiling. Check your outer satellites. See who's coming. A low beep interrupted. The hall's main display, reserved for judgments, flickered to life. A single orbital scan. Dozens of signals. Ships. Encrypted IDs. Every one Terran. Velm stared in disbelief. Those ships don't exist. Earth's fleet was. Ghosts, Roke said. You turned us into myths. You forgot that myths don't die. They wait. Another signal pulsed on screen. Not a ship. A code. Ancient, recursive, human. Every Imperial system touched by Terran subnets began to ping. Velm whispered. Impossible. Roke looked over his shoulder at the crowd still scrambling. You built your empire over our ashes. You thought we'd lie still. He turned back to Velm. You should have salted the soil. A single alert echoed over the chamber's comms, an emergency broadcast not from Roke, not from any ship. From inside Zargoth Prime. 4 words repeated in every language. War protocol reinitiated. Stand by. Roke looked down at his chains still hanging from his wrists. He stepped forward and the chains fell loose, magnetically unlocked. His voice cut through the sirens. This was never your execution. He walked past Velm, whose weapon hung limp at his side. It was our countdown. The moons of Sector 19 blinked back to life. In a system long abandoned, beneath a crust of iron debris, a relay station once assumed dead began to hum. A pulse ran through its ancient Terran circuitry, igniting layers of dust-choked memory banks. The code it received was older than most living species, recursive, minimal, brutal. One line repeated on loop. Protocol Thanatos. Execute. 4 billion kilometers away, a derelict ship embedded in a frozen asteroid groaned. Its hull lit up from within, casting sharp red slashes across space. The insignia on its side, faded, almost erased, shimmered back to visibility. TSV Dawnbreaker. Its AI core spun awake. No voice. Just the sound of fuel cells realigning. Weapons charged without instruction. Engines warmed in dead silence. Back on Zargoth Prime, Velm watched the projections unfold on his private command display, each blinking red icon an intruder. This is not possible, he growled. They had no fleet. The technician nearest him stammered. The codes are Terran, but authenticated. They're inside our encryption protocols. How many ships? Unknown. They're uncounted. They're not broadcasting conventionally. Velm turned to Roke, still standing calmly in the center of the tribunal chamber. Is this some bluff? A trick? Roke tilted his head slightly. It's not a trick. It's a return. And it's not even the beginning. Velm's carapace twitched. You want another soul war? You think we fear extinction? You fear inconvenience, Roke said. Extinction just hasn't introduced itself properly. Elsewhere, a mining station in the Ancaris Rift lost gravity for 6 seconds. Then the workers began screaming. Something climbed out of the comms relays, an AI construct built to mimic harmless maintenance subroutines. It rewrote the life support system into a message. Across every holoscreen, the same phrase scrawled in red. We remember. At the heart of the Galactic Empire's data cloud, a fracture began to spread, microscopic but rapidly expanding. It didn't crash the system. It didn't overload. It simply unlocked. Roke didn't need more weapons. He just needed access. Back on Zargoth, Velm slammed his claws into a command console. Purge all Imperial networks. Full isolation. Wipe the architecture. No use, the technician whispered. They're not riding on our systems. They're in the fallback cores. Pre-Empire strata. Embedded before the founding. Roke's voice was calm. We seeded you before you knew what seeding was. Velm wheeled around. Why now? Why wait this long? Roke stepped forward. Because victory wasn't the goal. Witnessing your decay was. In the deep warrens of Zargatha's understructure, panels opened one by one. Drones emerged, not with brute force, but with surgical intent. They dissected security nodes, rewired access points, mapped weak spots, rerouted power. They didn't shout rebellion, they whispered infrastructure collapse. Up above, the viewing spire's lights flickered. Entire wings of the complex blinked off-grid. Not explosions. Not sabotage. Reclaiming. Seal the command core. Velm barked. I want every damn exit shut. Lock the apex gates. But the apex gates were already open. A low groan passed through the walls. Not metal stress. Something old moving. Roke touched his wrist. A faint pulse acknowledged him. Not a weapon. A sync check. I know this game. Velm snapped. Psychological operations. Intimidation tactics. You humans always tried to play shadow gods. You taught us how, Roke replied. Your purge drove us underground. You showed us what forgetting looks like. We simply became unforgettable. Alarms rose in pitch. The central power column began to drain, but nothing overloaded. Nothing burst. It all slowed. Velm lunged toward the nearest override panel. It sparked. Refused him. Then Roke's voice echoed from the room's high speakers. This is Elias Roke. Commander, Terran Recon. This message is live and looping. To all sleepers, you are cleared. Mission Alpha is in effect. In forgotten bunkers, in mining suits, in Starliner crews no one watched. Humans stopped pretending. Velm's aides turned, weapons raised. For a moment, it seemed loyalty would hold. Then two aides dropped their rifles. One removed their helmet. Human. Smiling. War's on, Marshal, she said. We've been bored for centuries. Velm backed away, voice dry now, desperate. You can't win. We don't need to win, Roke replied. He tapped the base of the tribunal dais. We just need you to lose loud enough. A final system-wide alert chimed overhead. Zargath Prime, primary control diverted. Terran Sovereignty Protocol, active. Order, reclaim. The ceiling cracked open. Above, through the exposed dome, a ship descended, silent, triangular, unmarked but unmistakably Terran. Not new. Not sleek. But alive. Velm turned, stumbling. This is madness. You can't have gotten past the outer ring. You built your empire on our grave, Roke said. Turns out, graves make excellent camouflage. Velm faced him, breath shuddering. You're not a soldier. You're a terrorist. Roke finally smiled. I'm a historian with better toys. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, humanity had already arrived. Smoke curled in ribbons through the upper halls of Zargath Prime, slow and deliberate, like the fortress itself was exhaling. The once untouchable prison moon, designed to hold 1,000 warlords and break every rebellion, now groaned with the weight of something it had never known, infiltration from within. Commander Elias Roke moved through the corridor alone, no guards, no weapons, only footsteps. Every camera he passed swiveled to track him. None raised an alert. He nodded once at one of them. Status? A voice answered from the air. Female, calm, flat. Primary defense systems overridden. Subterranean vaults 2 through 9, active. Outer anti-orbital grid compromised. Ship entry allowed under legacy clearance. Roke exhaled through his nose. Estimated reaction time from command? 10 minutes, 8 seconds before total comprehension. They're slow. Good. Around him, the lights dimmed again. Not a power loss, an intentional shift in control. The environment obeyed different logic now, an older authority written in code no current Empire protocol could overwrite. It didn't just override the fortress. It reclaimed it. Far below, in a section previously labeled condemned, metal walls cracked outward. From them, ancient frames emerged, tall, jointed, human-shaped but wrong. Not droids. Bodies with memory, stored infantry. They weren't built. They were buried. Each one bore an insignia, LSA, Last Strike Assembly. A Terran combat division that had never been officially decommissioned. Because no one knew it still existed. They began to move. High Marshal Velm pounded his fist against the sealed bulkhead, breath ragged, mandibles twitching. "Why is the floor opening?" he shouted. The aide beside him stared at a handheld terminal, pale. "Sir, the entire lower substructure is reorganizing. It's reshaping into a defensive posture." "From what command?" The aide swallowed. "None that we issued." Velm turned to the wall display, which now blinked in crimson script. "Reclamation in progress. Terran asset priority, Rogue command." The screen fuzzed out. In another sector, the riot among prisoners spread like a controlled burn. At first, the guards had tried conventional suppression, gas, shock rifles, neural disruptors. But the prisoners weren't just angry. They were coordinated. They moved in cells, relayed positions, baited ambushes. They were armed not with smuggled weapons, but system overrides. Walls opened for them. Doors sealed behind their attackers. One guard commander sent a panicked distress to Velm. "They knew the layout! They're cutting us off by floor! How the hell do they know our vents, our power lines?" Then silence. Velm watched the feed die. Static. He turned to Rogue's image on the main screen, now broadcast across every internal channel. The old human was sitting in the warden's chair, elbows resting on steel, eyes calm. "Greetings, Zargoth. This is your unofficial debrief." He leaned forward. "You've spent centuries mocking a species you thought extinct. You took our home. Our name. You even turned our war crimes into museum pieces." Behind him, the feed briefly flickered to an underground hangar. Dozens of Terran drop units, old, scarred, ancient, stood upright. Their engines lit in sequence. Rogue continued, voice quiet but echoing in every hallway. "We buried things. Not because we were afraid. But because you weren't ready." In the warden's chamber, Velm ripped the transmitter from the console. "Cut his signal!" "No," came the reply. From behind him. Velm spun. One of his own aides, Zarnath, second-level security analyst, stood expressionless. Then blinked. "Human. You're not." Zarnath smiled. "Terran Sleeper, 5th-gen adaptation. Implanted 12 years ago. You approved my clearance." He drew no weapon. Just tapped a panel. The lights dropped again. Elsewhere, in the launch bay, the Terran ship that had descended earlier powered up internal turbines. Every camera caught it. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't beautiful. It looked like something that survived being crushed by time. It lifted silently. No fanfare. Just momentum and certainty. Inside it, more humans, once scattered across the galaxy, armed themselves. Some had implants fused to their skulls. Others moved like they'd never stopped training. All wore the same insignia. Operation Emberwake. Back in the control chamber, Rogue's image returned. He looked directly into the lens. "To any human listening, the signal is real. You are clear to act. You know your training. You know your objectives. You know why we waited." The signal flashed red. Terran Protocol Alpha, burnback. Cleared. In the Zargoth engine bays, automated coolant systems reversed polarity. Within seconds, the moon's own gravity drives began to overheat, not dangerously. Strategically. Sections of the fortress would now drift off calibration. Interior guidance would fail. Long-range targeting arrays went dark. Velm's last attempt at counterstrike was to activate the onboard Purge AI, a brutal system meant to vaporize the moon's interior if ever lost to enemy hands. He entered his code. Access denied? New credentials scrolled onto the screen. Authorize user E. Roke. Failsafe status nullified. The final blow wasn't an explosion. It was the quiet fall of control. Roke stood alone in the warden's chamber, now stripped of pageantry, banners burned down. He touched the console, and the walls parted. Outside the window, 100 dormant satellites now moved in formation, like vultures returning to a long-dead battlefield. He whispered, "Lights out, Empire!" And the stars around Zargath dimmed. Zargath's throne chamber once pulsed with ceremonial energy. Now it was quiet. No guards. No banners. No audience. Only the smell of burnt circuitry and the low hum of reactivated systems that had outlived 3 empires. The giant circular table, once surrounded by alien warlords, sat cracked and smoking. At its center, Roke rested in the High Marshal's seat, posture stiff, one arm bleeding from a split elbow he hadn't noticed. From the window above, the stars had rearranged. Not physically, but with meaning, formations that hadn't lit in hundreds of years now pulsed in sequence. Those weren't constellations. They were signals. Answers to a question only humans had remembered to ask. "Status," Roke said softly. A voice replied, synthetic, deep, unmistakably Terran. 79 beacons answered. 33 reconstructions underway. 11 major Empire nodes in collapse. Roke's lips parted slightly. Relief didn't register as joy, just endurance. And the others? Waking. In a control room on the Empire's capital world, chaos unfolded. Communication relays jammed. Internal AI refused protocol updates. Terran subroutines, disguised for centuries as maintenance ghosts, declared system sovereignty and locked out every override. A once glorious empire began to stutter. Diplomats screamed. Defense ministers raged. Across the fractured map, one name kept repeating. Roke. Aboard a Leviathan-class cruiser, orbiting a gas giant in a forgotten sector, Admiral Delahint, Terran descent, presumed dead, stood before a screen showing Zargath's broadcast. He rubbed his jaw slowly, smiled. About damn time! On his command, old warships powered up. Crews stirred from stasis. The silence ended with a single coded phrase. "This is the final recall." Back on Zargath, Velm crawled through a dark corridor, his claws scraping metal. Once a commander of fear, now reduced to escape. Every attempt to contact the fleet returned only static or Terran war music echoing across channels. He stumbled, breath short, rage clinging to every movement. He found a side panel and wrenched it open. Manual override analog. Ancient. A voice behind him. "You really thought you'd walk out of here?" Velm turned. It wasn't Roke. It was a young human, barely 30 by Terran standards, lean, scarred, eyes too steady. She stepped forward holding nothing but a data key. "You left our bodies to rot," she said, "but not our backups." Velm growled. "You're parasites. Your kind thrives on rot." "No," she replied. "We survive it." She tossed the key at his feet. "Plug it in. See what we saved." He didn't move. "Do it," she said. "You should know what's coming before it gets here." He inserted the key. Holograms bloomed around him, battlefields the Empire never documented. Uprisings they claimed were accidents. Survivors they lied about. A collage of resistance so wide it made his chest tighten. "These weren't rumors," he muttered. "No. These were rehearsals." She stepped back. "You were never at peace. You were in our testing ground." Velm tried to rise, tried to bark a command, but nothing came. The system around him stopped listening. In orbit, Empire ships began to burn. Human vessels didn't strike first. They let the Empire fire into their own jam targeting systems. Friendly fire flared through the black, capital ships firing blind, unable to tell ally from ghost. Panic overtook discipline. In the chaos, Terran forces moved like memory, fast, precise, merciless. Roke watched it unfold. They won't surrender, he said. The AI responded. Then they will break. The last thing Velm saw before blackout protocols seized the corridor was a message scrawled across every wall. You erased US. We rewrote ourselves. Across dozens of systems, sleeper agents discarded years of false identities. Factory workers, diplomats, tech slaves, suddenly combatants, synchronizing with orbiting AI fleets. No grand speeches. No banners. Just a chorus of quiet affirmations. Earth lives. Protocol confirmed. Reclamation ongoing. Roke didn't leave Zargoth. He stayed in the warden's chair, now an unrecognized throne. His blood crusted over. His voice cracked from too many hours awake. But when the final report came in, Empire outposts falling like snapped links in a chain, he allowed himself a brief silence. Not for victory. For acknowledgement. He pressed a calm to his temple. This is Roke. To all command cells, initiate integration. Burn the Imperial flag, not their archives. We don't want ruins. We want the record. The response came from a dozen voices. Acknowledged. Reclamation continues. Roke leaned back. They thought we wanted revenge. A pause. We just wanted the mic. The escape pod landed in a ruin. Charred metal and broken structures jutted from the moon's surface like the bones of something old and buried too fast. High Marshal Velm stumbled from the hatch, legs shaking, one eye swollen shut. The pod had launched on auto command. He hadn't ordered it. Someone, had decided escape was preferable to a corpse in a command chair. The sky above Zargoth was full of shadows. Not clouds. Not ships. Silhouettes. Terran dreadnoughts hung silent, massive, unpainted, unbroadcasting. They didn't need to announce their arrival. The Empire's silence was confirmation enough. Velm dragged himself forward across the grid of pulverized alloy. The ground felt strange, charged, as if something underneath still breathed. He found the wreck of a former transport bay and collapsed under a steel arch, panting. A shadow moved. Footsteps. He didn't look up. If you've come to kill me, he rasped, get on with it. No, said a voice. Killing you would waste the message. Roke stood a few meters away. Unarmed. Still wearing the same torn prison uniform, though it now bore a Terran command patch stitched crudely at the shoulder. Blood dried at his temple. The left sleeve was burned away. Velm tried to rise. Failed. You, humans! Always needing the last word. Roke stepped closer. No. We needed the right one. And we waited. The High Marshal coughed, bitter laughter scratching his throat. You think you've won? You think fleets and lights and riots count as legacy? No. Roke crouched beside him, lowering his voice. But they'll do until history catches up. Velm turned his head. You were nothing. Forgotten. Dead. That's what made it work. Around them, the air was unnaturally quiet. Even the sky ships didn't hum. The Terran fleet moved on silent drives, not out of stealth, but confidence. They didn't need to hide. They didn't need to broadcast. Their presence was the message. Velm's gaze flicked to the horizon, where shattered towers collapsed in slow spirals. The Empire will answer. You think this is a victory, but it's not the end. It never is, Roke replied. That's the point. He stood and tapped a device on his wrist. A pulse emitted, low and wide. A signal, not a strike. Moments later, figures began to emerge from the dust, humans in reclaimed armor, survivors in patched gear, even Xenos who once bore Terran flags on their skin as tribute, now stepping out of hiding. They didn't cheer. They didn't speak. They simply stood in formation. Velm squinted. You brought witnesses. No. Roke shook his head. I brought heirs. Far above, a massive transmission beacon pulsed to life, an ancient Terran relay, once buried beneath the crust of a moon that the Empire never charted properly. It burst out a message in every known language, including some long band. This is not a war. This is a correction. Velm spat blood. They'll come for you. They already have, Roke said. But they came too late. He turned, giving the old warlord his back, and walked toward the formation. No guards flanked him. No armor encased him. Just posture, breath, and presence. The crowd parted. At the center of the line stood a child. Maybe 9. Wrapped in a tattered coat too large for his frame, holding a data slab in both hands. The slab lit up with the Terran crest. Roke knelt. Ready? The boy nodded. Clear your throat. Speak loud. Let them know it's real. The child looked up at the distant ships, then down at the glowing words. He read slowly, deliberately. We are the descendants of Earth. We were scattered. We were erased. We are awake. The words transmitted across the stars. On Imperial outposts, stations, diplomatic satellites, and scorched archives, the message arrived. Some shut down instantly. Some broadcast it. Some tried to jam it and failed. In the Empire's core world, alarms screamed in every frequency. Thousands of species heard a child's voice speak a language they had been told was dead. And they listened. Velm remained on the ground, coughing, laughing, choking. You think one message makes a nation? No, Roke said, standing tall again. But it reminds them we never stopped being one. He walked to the edge of the ridge and looked down at Sargatha's remains. They called us ghosts, he said quietly. But ghosts don't rise. We did. Above him, the sky didn't darken. It turned blue. A Terran beacon shone from the lead dreadnought, painting the clouds in the color of a forgotten world. And across every system still blinking with life, a single update blinked into view. Terran presence, confirmed. Empire status, contested. Age of silence, ended.